A thriving border town undercuts South Africa's anti-immigrant mood. People by the thousands risk crocodile attacks, robbery, drowning, and arrest to cross the Limpopo River from Zimbabwe to South Africa, part of a booming migrant economy. What's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning in. My name's Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, filming this video live from Budapest, Hungary. And today we are talking about Southern Africa. We're talking about Africa because I love the continent of Africa. I spent years of my life living and traveling through Africa, and I would love to return to see more of the countries, more of the beautiful, vast continent. So the countries that we're talking about today are Zimbabwe, which is this very large landlocked country here that borders Mozambique, Zambia, Botswana, and South Africa, the other country we will be talking about today, which borders Botswana, Namibia, Mozambique, completely surrounds Lesotho, and also completely, somewhat surrounds Swaziland. This is a very developed country in Africa. Some people say it's the most developed nation in Africa entirely, and Zimbabwe is a poorer nation that has gone through many years of economic strife. So many people from Zimbabwe are fleeing into South Africa, trying to make a better life for themselves. And unfortunately, some people in South Africa are not happy with the immigrants that are coming in. There have been anti-immigrant protests and riots throughout the country in recent years against these Zimbabwe immigrants. Me, as a Black American and as somebody who is a globalist, Pan-Africanist, who loves all Black life, I have to say that we as Black people should be seeing each other as our brothers and sisters, not as enemies, even if they're crossing man-made borders that were created by Europeans to divide the African people. But I'm going to jump into the article and read it. I find it very interesting. This was written by Lindsay Trutel and John Elligan, and the photographs for How Silva. I believe that's a Portuguese name, and I hope I pronounced it right. Lindsay Trutel and How Silva reported from Musina, a town close to South Africa's border with Zimbabwe. John Elligan reported from Johannesburg. And this was published on December 24th, 2023. By 7 a.m., lines of customers snake around the block outside stores on the main commercial strip in Musina, a bustling South African border town where thousands of people arrive daily from neighboring Zimbabwe to buy food, clothes, and other necessities that are hard to get back home. A few miles away, at the border, pickup trucks bearing the seal of South Africa's newly formed Border Patrol inspect the razor wire fence, looking to arrest people who cross illegally, braving bandits, crocodiles, and the rushing Limpopo River. The border force represents an effort by the government months ahead of crucial national elections to respond to popular demand and clamp down on migrants sneaking into the country. Musina, surrounded by farms and a copper mine, is where the government's muscular immigration policy collides with a tricky reality that many South Africans are loath to concede, that even people who cross the border illegally may be good for the country. So I want to talk about this right here. You guys might know my opinion about immigrants or migrants in general, and I'm not an expert on South Africa. I have not visited South Africa, and I only have met one South African, an Indian friend of mine that I met in Tunisia. But this is what I just have to say about migrants in general. Generally, immigrants, migrants do not come to cause harm in other people's countries. They don't come intentionally coming to commit crime, even if you consider the crime of crossing a border to take care of yourself and your family is somehow so heinous that it is a high-level crime. Even if you consider that most people after that first crime are not considering of committing heinous crimes like murder or rape or other things that are very detrimental to people. The only time people end up committing heinous crimes, usually, most of the time, is because of poverty. And when people are ostracized from society, left on the outskirts of society to fend for themselves, of course, they're going to resort to crime. And so I feel like this article might be going into that direction of seeing migrants or immigrants as a positive thing. But I have to say this as well. Black people do deserve sovereignty, because what was taken from us was sovereignty during colonialism. So, you know, people came to our nations, our kingdoms, our countries in Africa many years ago and said, this is ours now and we're going to dictate what goes on. So yes, the people of South Africa do have the right to have border control and police that patrol the border and an immigration system that they're comfortable with. I agree with all of that. Every country has the right to do that. But what we should be doing, and this is my suggestion, we should have a more lenient and lax policy for for black Africans in these nations. Because if black people are seeking refuge in one African nation that was created as a colonial construct that was destined to fail, because all they were meant to do was to extract resources, like from Zimbabwe, like from Zambia, like from Botswana, like from South Africa. And these were not meant to be stable nations built on naturally occurring borders that the black people there decided if that's what's happening, if black people are seeking a better life, we should be opening the doors for those black people. The same way us as black Americans want to return to Africa, be in Africa, contribute to Africa, help Africa develop, have Africa have its cultural impact on us, all of that. There should be that open door policy for us. It should be the same on the continent as well for other black people. That's what I have to say. But let's get into the article and hear more about it. So, without them, Musina is going to be a big ghost town, said Jean-Pierre Vivier, a South African who, with his family, owns a butcher shop that relies on migrant customers. Like politicians in the United States, Europe, and elsewhere who score points by promising hardened borders and mass deportation, their South African counterparts are pitching a sweeping crackdown on foreigners to appeal to voters, playing on similar, often unfounded fears that immigrants fuel crime and steal jobs. South Africa has its own struggle with poverty and extreme inequality, but it is wealthy compared with some of its neighbors, making it a tempting destination for migrants from Africa and beyond. Last month, South Africa's government proposed the most sweeping overhaul of its immigration laws since becoming a democracy in 1994, aiming to greatly restrict the entry of foreigners. In October, President Cyril Ramaphosa officially launched the new Border Patrol Agency to coordinate police, military, and treasury operations, saying that an increase in undocumented migration had exacerbated many of the country's social and economic problems. I want to make this clear. I'm not saying that people should flood into another nation, because no country could sustainably accommodate millions of people going in at one time. Of course, that is dangerous, that's wild, and that's not what I'm suggesting. But the idea that we're going to have a hard hand against other black people who are coming from a place of destitution and poverty, and they want to make a better life, we should make that easy for them to easily assimilate into the nation. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that just open the doors and let the floodgates in and people just swarm into a country. No, of course, that's going to cause mayhem. But what I'm saying is that the policy, just like, and I would apply this to my own country as well. So don't look at me as like some crazy black American dictating what Africa should be like. No, I'm applying the same rules that I would like for America to have, so that we don't have children separated at the border, people dying in the deserts trying to cross into America, and all sorts of crazy things. No, what I'm saying is that we need a sane, legal immigration policy for every nation, especially when it concerns black life. All right, so this is a picture here. A shopper from Zimbabwe bought meat at the OBC butcher shop in Musina. And here's another picture here. Shoppers from Zimbabwe pushed a cart filled with meat bought in Musina. All right, they were really shopping. They were shopping heavy. I see some potatoes. Okay, all sorts of things. All right, they ready to eat. All right, let's go here. Earlier this month, in an effort to show how tough the new border agency has been, its leader said it had stopped 443 Zimbabwean children traveling on 42 buses without their parents from being trafficked into South Africa at the border post near Musina. Zimbabwean officials quickly rejected the claim as fiction, saying they had no record of the South African authorities handing over that many children. Zimbabweans living in South Africa said that even if busloads of children had been stopped, they were not being trafficked, but instead were coming into South Africa to visit their parents for the holidays, a typical practice. So yeah, if there are children being caught up in unfortunate circumstances like that, trafficked across country lines, yeah, that needs to stop. People need to investigate that. But, you know, most of the time, it's adults who are deciding to leave their country behind. And most people don't want to do that. Most people don't want to leave their language, their culture, their nation, all that sort of stuff. People generally want to stay home. It takes extreme circumstances to make somebody want to leave. Just like me. I was growing up in America around all that racism, around all that white supremacy, around all that violence, around all that economic destitution, barely having economic opportunities, no two pennies to rub together. Still really don't now, but generally my life is better off had I stayed in America and continued to suffer under the system of white supremacy that would have tried its hardest to keep me at the bottom. But I'm a fighter, and I'm going to continue to fight to make something of my life, as should you. But I'm going to continue here. Everything goes back to we are going to elections, said Yona Zoya, a native of Zimbabwe who lives in South Africa and works with immigrants. As soon as you say down with foreigners, then you get mileage or you get their votes. As anti-immigrant violence has flared in parts of South Africa, Mr. Zoya said that many migrants were so fearful that they were sending valuables back to their home countries, worried that their homes might be attacked. A survey showed that last year, 69% of South Africans believed that immigrants increased crime. I just have to say this. A lot of black South Africans or South Africans in general might have heat for the Zimbabweans coming or the Mozambicans coming or the Zambians coming, whoever is coming into the country. They got a lot of heat for the Nigerians or any black Africans coming into South Africa, but they got no smoke at all to say about the Indians who come in and buy up everything. They have no smoke at all about the white folks in South Africa who are still there today owning most of the wealth in the nation. Y'all got no smoke for those people, but y'all can get down all day on blasting on the Zimbabweans and the Mozambicans. Ain't that white supremacy in play? Ain't that black self-hatred in play? Don't talk about the Zimbabweans unless you're going to talk about the Boers. Don't talk about the black Mozambicans unless you're going to talk about the Indians who run Durban. Don't talk about any of that. Don't talk about any of that until you got smoke for everybody who robbed black South Africa of economic prosperity and civil rights and human rights and dignity. Let's go and continue here. Oh, by the way, this is a map of Musina. Musina is this small town right here. As you can see, Zimbabwe is right across the river, and that's the Beit Bridge border post. So let's go here. We have a similar town in the U.S. It's called Gonzales, and I think it's in Texas, if I remember right. And it's crazy because Gonzales is a literal city that's divided on the U.S. side and the Mexican side. And people cross that border all the time, but literally the Mexican side is way poorer, and then on the other side, you have the U.S. side, which is more developed and all that sort of stuff. And it's also a hub for a lot of illegal immigration as well. So it's very similar. The more you see the world, the more you see that it's all the same. Let's continue. But in Musina, locals are more than happy to look the other way when Zimbabweans wade across Limpopo, sneak through holes in the border fence, or grease a guard's palm. Business owners in Musina do not feel like they are competing with foreign migrants, as they might be some of South Africa's big cities, said Moses Matshiva, who owns a building that houses a tavern, pharmacy, and hookah bar in Nansfield, a township near Musina. We here don't complain because they come and buy and go back, he said. So here, one of the craziest things about going to East Africa, or because I went and traveled to Tanzania and Kenya, is seeing women, walk around with so many things on their head, and they do it with so much grace and poise, and it's amazing. Like, this is a truly African thing that's totally amazing. You got to see it for yourself. Walking in the streets of Tanzania and in Kenya, my wife and I would go by and see a woman with her arms down with a big bucket on her head just like this, walking so smoothly. And usually they put like a little padded plate on their head to make that thing balance. It's so amazing. It's so graceful. It's very cool. We tried to do it and we can't do it. We can't do it. You just got to be born with it, not sworn in it. Anyway, a busy shopping street in Musina where many customers are from Zimbabwe. Here's another picture here. Vendors in Musina in Limpopo province near the Beit Bridge border post. By the way, if you want to check out videos of my African adventures, go subscribe to Backpack Bandits, my second channel. Shopkeepers cater to their cross-border customs by adjusting their operating hours to accommodate people who have traveled overnight and by selling items in bulk, like trays or canned food, buckets of cookies, and crates of energy drinks. I remember when we crossed the border from Arusha into Mombasa, and as soon as you cross the border, the bus stops at one of those border towns, and everybody's like pulling out money, trying to exchange money, pulling out all sorts of devices and things for you to buy, whether that be fruits, whether that be cell phone cases. This is common in a lot of places where there's a lot of transit back and forth. All right. Mr. Vivier's butcher shop on Musina's main road has 32 employees producing 70 tons of sausages each month for resale across the border. His family members have also become middlemen for more affluent shoppers, securing boxes of rarities like Pringles, Oreos, and in one case, 130 pounds of chocolate bars to be sent to Zimbabwe's capital, Harare. As in much of the world, migrants to South Africa tend to be young, driven, and entrepreneurial, adding far more to the economy than just competition for jobs, experts say. A study by the World Bank found that one immigrant worker typically produces 2 jobs for South Africans. Another by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development found that immigrants contribute 9% of South Africa's gross domestic product. That's pretty funny. I mean, you could easily make a pretty xenophobic joke by saying, yeah, every immigrant to South Africa creates 2 jobs: a police to arrest that immigrant and the border guard that's going to kick his ass over the border or something like that. I mean, you could say something like that, but no, statistically, the stats always show that immigrants want to contribute to a nation. The reason why America is the most richest, powerful nation in the world is because we have an endless supply of people who are trying to move into the nation, willing to work as many hours as possible for whatever pay to just contribute to the GDP, to take care of their families and that sort of stuff. America was built on the free labor of my ancestors and that sort of stuff. So yeah, immigrants, migrants, people moving to different places or being brought to different places definitely contribute to a country's economy. Going to continue here. Migration has indelibly changed Musina, once a sleepy town. South African shop owners rent their storefronts to entrepreneurs from Pakistan, Bangladesh, Ethiopia, and Somalia who move to Musina to cash in on the bulk buying trends. A Chinese-owned outlet store is one of the largest businesses in town, selling everything from furniture to building materials. I will bet my last dollar. I will bet all the Tanzanian shekels I can muster that the biggest traders, the biggest people making the money here are the Pakistanis, the Bangladeshis, the Somalians and Ethiopians. And the Zimbabweans who are coming in, who everybody got smoke for, who everybody has beef with, they're probably getting the crumbs that are left on the table. I'm pretty sure the Pakistanis, the Chinese have the biggest shops, make the most money in Musina, yet and still people in South Africa are like, send the Zimbabweans packing, but they got no heat for the Chinese. That's embarrassing. That's embarrassing. I'm going to continue here. Zimbabwean buyers usually resell the goods back home, some in shops of their own. So, part of the border fence near the Bates Bridge border post in Musina. Yeah, that's scary. That's scary looking. All those trees. Who knows who knows what's out there in the wilderness? And then you gotta climb over or jump over that barbed wire. And here these guys are looking at it. This guy's smoking a cig. This guy is afraid. Look at that look on his face. He knows he's gonna be the first one through the barbed wire. He is not feeling that. He knows he got the short end of the stick. They drew straws and he got the shortest straws. So now he's got to climb through. He's gonna get his ass cut up. Brother here is like, yep, I did that, knowing he gave him the short straw on purpose. That's hilarious. Zimbabwean men planning to cross illegally into South Africa near a gap in the border fence near Musina. Almost all of Musina's economy is reliant on cross-border shopping, and there is money to be made at every step of the process, legally and illegally. By the border bridge and the checkpoint, food vendors live and work from shacks erected next to the road. The surrounding area resembles a car dealership with rows and rows of Japanese-made cars waiting for export to other African countries. The parking lot of a strip mall has been commandeered by packers, usually men who charge about $20 to pack and wrap items in a way that can avoid scrutiny at the border. This is very interesting. I might move to Musina in South Africa and get in on this business. Sounds like there's money to be made. You know, there's so much money in Africa. People think Africa is poor, but Africa got a lot of wealth. Africa has so much opportunity for anybody with an entrepreneurial mind, a lot of grit, and also, you know, a scrupulous moral compass, because you probably will have to get your hands dirty a bit to do some business in Africa. But sounds like they're making big money out there in Musina. Boy, them Pakistanis are packing it up. Maxwell Natuli, wearing a yellow vest, oversees the scene, guarding against robbers who prey on cross-border customers. who carry large wads of cash. He worked as a taxi driver for years, but now makes more money at this. In the chaos, Mr. Ntuli, a South African, loudly berates the packers, many of whom are Zimbabweans living in South Africa illegally. As shoppers scurry back to the border by midday, they are greeted by another set of middlemen in this transnational economy. Yep, they doing big business. Yeah, boy coming through with the packs. He got the packs. He's like, you get some toilet paper, you get some baby diapers, you get some wet wipes. Everybody, he's out here slanging them things. Okay, people loading a truck in Musina with goods bound for Zimbabwe. All right, here's another picture here. People with goods they brought in the back of a truck in Musina, taking it back to Zimbabwe. I got to get in on this business, man. There's money to be made here. She's low key. She's like, ooh, I'm about to be rich. I'm about to be the richest girl in Harare. Okay. This is dope. I like seeing black people make money. I just hate xenophobia amongst black people over border disputes. But yeah, let's jump into this. To avoid paying high import duties or bribes, shoppers hire porters to carry their wares across the border, often in bulging backpacks. Sometimes several porters will split the stock among each other and declare it as their personal luggage. Other times they slip through one of the many gaping holes in the fence not far from the checkpoint where officials stamp passports. The porters duck behind trees and hide from soldiers camping within view, then dip back into South Africa to pick up more loads. Two Zimbabwean porters who identified themselves only as Simba and Justice for fear of arrest said they supported their families this way. Justice has been a porter for 14 years, while Simba took up the dangerous work in 2018, earning roughly $5 per trip to ferry goods and nearly $30 to guide people across the Limpopo River. Women, seen as a liability when running from soldiers or crocodiles, are charged more. Well, that's sexist. No, I'm joking. I understand. But I just got to say this. All this is happening, but this makes me want to have an African Union, like a, how can I say this, duty-free Africa, where there's trade across the continent more easily. And there should be a united Africa like there is a European Union, because in Europe, what they do, there's an open market, free market, right? You can send a good from Budapest to, France and not pay extra duties and all that sort of stuff. So it makes trade very easy. But Africa does more trade with countries outside of Africa than they do with their own neighbors at the border. That's what it says on paper. As we can see here, people are still doing business across border from Musina. But what is happening is that officially what should be done is that if you were to send goods from Zimbabwe to South Africa, you would have to pay duties, fees. Those are essentially taxes for sending goods. And it would be much better for African economies if there were duty-free trade across borders. That's what I honestly think. So I'm going to jump here. If I'm working hard, I can do 4 trips in a day, said Simba, speaking through the razor fence from the Zimbabwean side. Okay, 4 times 30. What is that? 4 times 30? I'm bad at math, guys. That's $120 a day, which is not bad. If he does 4 a day, 5 times a day, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money for a Zimbabwean. Low key. I would be happy with $130 or $120 a day. Hey, that's some good money. If you add that up times 30, that's quite a bit. Okay, you can actually eat. I'm going to continue here. Me, I'm a lazy boy, Justice said, laughing. I only did 2 trips. Getting caught by border security will send to them back $50 or 3 months in jail. Both say they have been caught and deported more times than they can remember. For heavier loads, other porters say they go downriver where the waters are shallow and donkeys carry the goods into Zimbabwe. Across the river, a vehicle waiting in the bush delivers the items to their owners in Zimbabwe. On a recent afternoon in mid-December, Simba and Justice had just crossed the Limpopo and were approaching the fence to enter South Africa when they saw a vehicle approaching. As South African government truck drove by, carrying a new roll of razor wire and workers tasked with fixing the fence, the South Africans and Zimbabweans waved at each other, then carried on with their separate, deeply intertwined journeys. Ain't that crazy? See, they're just out there doing their job on both sides. The guards come, they see the smugglers, and they say, "What up?" And the smugglers see the guards and they say, "What up?" And they keep on doing their thing because they're putting up the white man's fence. Some white man or some Indian man in South Africa is like, "Put the fence up at the border. We don't need the Zimbabweans coming into our country." Right. And then they go do it. Then they see their brothers and they're like, "Hey, what up? What up? We making money. Y'all making money. We good." It's hilarious. That's pretty funny. All right. Part of the border fence near the Bates Bridge border near Musina. And that is the end of the article. So I'll just say this once again. I find this very interesting. All the economic development that's happening in Africa, all the intertwinedness of the African economies. But we need to get rid of this colonial mindset where we view our borders or our nationalities more important than our blackness. Our blackness comes center because this is how the world treats us, views us, and has allowed white supremacy to exist. And we are all victims of it. We should not play into it by hating on each other because I'm American, you're South African, you're Zimbabwean, I'm Mozambican, etc., etc. There needs to be a united Africa. I would argue for a one currency Africa, a passport free, visa less travel Africa for different nations, if not one African nation. I think this would be best for the continent and for our people. Yes, we can still maintain our linguistic differences, ethnic differences, cultural differences, but we need to be united because Africa has so much promise and so many people that want to see a better tomorrow, but we make it harder because we cling to these colonial constructs that were foisted upon us. And what do? We embrace them. Like we embrace the white man's God, like we embrace the white man's religion. Let's get rid of at least one thing that the white man gave to us, forced upon us. Let's get rid of these borders and have a united Africa for our people. Shout out to all the brothers in Musina making money, Musina out here. I might head down there and get my trade on, get my deal on, that sort of stuff. Can't wait to go back to Africa. Y'all go check out Backpack Bandits, my other channel with all the other travel videos with me and my wife going around the world. My name's Simon Hill. Peace.